This can't be. They're not going to do this after a year. Give it a chance, for gosh sake.
It was a sad time for the city of Seattle. It shouldn't have happened.
I couldn't believe it. We'd worked so hard to get Major League Baseball in Seattle.
I was devastated when I found out the team was leaving.
Of course they won't leave. You know, they'll stay forever. This is the Pilots. I love them.
Now the lineup for the hometown Seattle Pilots. At third base and leading off in the order, Tommy Harper. Harper at third. At second base and batting number 2 will be John Donaldson. Donaldson at second base. Batting third and playing in right field, Wayne Comer. Comer in right. Batting fourth and in center field, Steve Hobley. Hobley in center field. Batting fifth and in left field, Danny Walton. Walton in left. At first base, Don Mincher. Mincher at first base. The catcher will be Jerry McNertney. McNertney behind the plate. The starting shortstop, Fred Stanley.
Go, go, you pilots, you proud Seattle team. Go, go, you pilots, go out and build a dream. You brought the majors to the evergreen Northwest. Now go, go, you pilots, you're going to be the best.
It was a big deal, 1969 in Seattle, to have a second major pro sports team. The Sonics came in 1967. It was a real landmark event to land Major League Baseball, and this would be 7 years after the Seattle World's Fair in 1962 that I think probably put Seattle on the map nationally for things other than sports, and then to have 2 pro sports franchises arrive in the same decade, well, it was heady times.
I was really excited. I thought that it would be an amazing thing. I just couldn't believe that little Seattle, tucked over in the corner of the country, was getting a major league team.
Thousands and thousands of people were downtown Seattle because Seattle now in the major leagues of baseball. And they were so overjoyed that this finally was going to take place. And they embraced the pilot team. It was terrific.
Enthusiasm that that Seattle gave us when we flew up from Tempe to Seattle, and the parade and all the welcoming in the city was tremendous. I mean, a lot of people that don't know Seattle or never really was introduced to Seattle at that time thought that it was just a small little town up in the Northwest someplace, and kind of hicky. And they didn't realize it was a big metropolis with a lot of baseball fans.
I remember being dazzled because it was Major League Baseball and it was colorful and everyone was excited, and there just seemed to be such a buzz about the event and the team. I really can't remember much about the game. It was just being there and being part of this scene. And only upon reflection did I understand the tenuousness and the temporariness of what was transpiring in front of me. But to a young teenager, it looked like a lot of fun.
Baseball in Seattle started in the 1870s, 1880s, about 20 years after Seattle was settled. And at the time it was amateur and town team ball. And this eventually morphed into the first professional league in 1890. Seattle was a franchise in a 4-team league with Portland, Tacoma, and Spokane. It's called the Pacific Northwest League. And it lasted until mid-season 1892. And then in 1898, Daniel E. Dugdale arrived in Seattle. He was a former big league catcher on his way to the Klondike Gold Rush. And he stopped in Seattle and he decided to stay, fortunately for us and for our baseball lore. And he attempted a professional league in that first year in 1898, Didn't quite take, but by 1901 he was ready to try again, and he started the Pacific Northwest League, and this was the first of 69 consecutive years of professional baseball in Seattle. In 1919, actually before the 1919 season, he sold his ownership interest. He'd had enough. Other business interests were interested in re-entering the Coast League, and this began the era of the Seattle Indians franchise in the Pacific Coast League. By the fall of 1937, they were pretty much near financial ruin. The owners just really couldn't sustain it anymore. So much so that by the end of the season, the last game of the season, city and county officials actually raided the ballpark to get the back taxes that were due to them. So into this breach stepped Emil Sick. And Emil Sick was a local businessman, a brewery owner. He built this brand new ballpark in the Rainier Valley at a cost of estimated $350,000, which was a great sum in the heart of the Depression. And it was a beautiful structure, very fan-friendly. And he went about building a team from the front office down that was first rate. So this really began a glorious era for Seattle baseball. The Seattle Rainiers went from being an unsuccessful second division team with the Seattle Indians in the mid to late 30s to having fantastic success in a brand new ballpark and 3 consecutive pennants, which hadn't been done in the Coast League for 20 years. Proof of Seattle being a baseball town is in the numbers. You look at the fact that Seattle led all minor leagues across the country in attendance from the period of 1939 to 1954. And this included many more populous cities. It included all of the minor leagues, not just on the West Coast. And so the structure and the franchise that Emil Sick built coming out of the Depression was really impressive and long-lasting, and it built a base of fans here that led directly to what came after.
It's hard to tell who was making those decisions because whoever was making them didn't really know much about sports, because they made the mistake of drafting all older players. Their idea was that they were going to draft these old guys and they were going to be matching their best years, which were, way, way earlier. Those days were long gone. But they were going to draft these guys, and they were going to have their best seasons, match their best seasons, and the pilots were going to be pennant contenders right away. The Kansas City Royals, on the other hand, were pretty smart. They said, listen, it takes a long time to build a ball club. We're going to go with youth. And so they built a young team, and of course, they succeeded, and the pilots did not succeed.
It was kind of like a Frankenstein monster team, body parts from everywhere. We had some real squirrels on that team, and I was probably one of them. But, it was a fun team. We had some good guys that had been good in the past. Nuts, bolts, just a lot of stuff.
I knew most of the people who were going to become Seattle pilots. They were major league players from all over, a conglomeration of real great characters. But they were on the downward side.
We had some older guys that, and we had some older guys and some very young guys. But that's what happens when you get in an expansion draft. Nobody in baseball is going to give you any players. And if you get a real good one in an expansion draft, somebody in that organization made a mistake.
They're not going to get rid of guys that have still got a lot left. I was living proof that that worked because I sucked that whole year, you know. But there were still some guys that could play a little bit, Don Mencher and some of the boys, Rich Rollins. And they were still good enough to play in the big leagues, but obviously you don't get rid of people that's going to be doing well for you.
We had players that had winning traditions, so I think my feeling was that the organization tried to get some older players. They knew their financial situation, and I think they wanted to try to put together a team that could be competitive. And so we had, you know, some older players, more so I think than the Kansas City team did. They went for the younger players and to build a team. And really the first half of the year we competed pretty well, did pretty well.
He had some good ball players. Mincher was an experienced veteran. He had a pretty good year. Tommy Davis had a good year. And Tommy Harper, look at them, the bases that he stole. He was an exciting ball player.
Tommy Harper's on the base pass and he's ready to run. Buck Rogers is the backstop. I know he's got a gun. But Tommy's not worried. He's the leader in speed. I'm not talking about greenies. I'm talking about feet. Talking about in 1969, Tommy stole 73. That was most in the AL since 1915. When I think of him now, of everything that he's done, he's Tommy Harper on the base pass, ready to run, ready to run.
Harper. Steve Hovley started in center field. Look at this. Lou Piniella, left field. Hitless that day, struck out a couple of times. It wasn't long after that, Marvin Milk said, "You're out of here," and he goes to Kansas City.
The Pilots had obtained Lou Piniella, and he was a guy who had kicked around in the minor leagues for years. He used to play for the Portland minor league franchise, and came to spring training in 1969 and was having a very good season. But for some reason, depends on who you believe, Dewey Soriano or Marvin Milks, the general manager, thought that he was a hothead and was going to disrupt the team and decided that they were going to trade him. And of course, he ended up being Rookie of the Year.
He was one of our, I think, early draft picks, and Marvin Milks got down on him in spring training for some reason or other, and Kansas City offered Steve Whitaker to the ball club for Lou, and I think my recollection is that Soriano didn't like it, and I think he damn near nixed it, but he just decided he better let the guy, you know, do his thing, and so Milks traded him to Kansas City for Steve Whitaker, and Whitaker lasted about, what, 3 weeks, I think, and so it was one of the big baseball blunders of all time, I think.
Lou Piniella, he was there, that's right. I'll never forget what Joe Schultz, our manager, said. He said, "This guy can't hit." And about 2,800 hits later, I guess he could. That's right, we did get rid of Lou. I forgot about him.
One of the problems that the Pilots made is they tried to judge players based on their personalities. If they thought a guy was, you know, had a fiery personality or was difficult or in some way weird or different, they saw that as a defect. So they saw Piniella's hot-temperedness as a defect. They saw Mike Marshall's cerebral attitude toward the game as being a defect. This was weird. Steve Hovley's, you know, wonderful spaciness, they saw that as somehow subversive. And my rebellious nature and my giving anti-war talks the year before in Central Park made me somehow communist or a rebel of some kind. And so they got rid of us. They did not see that players who are somehow different, instead of that being a weakness, that's a strength. Because in the environment where most players are conservative from small towns, to be different is to be, you have to be pretty strong to maintain your identity in that environment. But they saw it as a weakness rather than a strength. They should have been looking for guys who were different instead of trying to get rid of them.
Some of the stories that I heard about Lou at Portland, he probably would never have played in the big leagues if it wasn't, or the opportunity. He had the talent, but he probably wouldn't have got the opportunity if it wasn't for the expansion draft.
For some it was their cup of coffee, for most it was their best last chance. There was no such thing as free agency, just cast-offs looking for a raft, unprotected in the expansion draft. So let's hear it, boys, for the pilots, 'cause this could be our year. And for a few it was the start of something, but for most it was their best last chance. For some it was their first and last.
If you were a rookie player and you were playing behind some guy who was a starting shortstop and you were a second string shortstop and sitting on the bench, the fact that you got drafted by a team that was a new team forming, well, that was pretty exciting because now you might get to play sooner. For an old guy sitting on the bench, same thing. Hey, this could be a resurrection of my career. Maybe I could find my swing, my old curveball, whatever it is. This was an opportunity. But of course the old guys understood too, boy, when you get put on a list to be drafted, your best years are pretty much behind you. But athletes don't think that way. They think, okay, you know, I can still win. I haven't been given an opportunity here. I'm going to go to the Seattle Pilots. I'm going to make the team. And my career, I'm going to be back where I was before. So everybody has high hopes about being drafted by a new team.
A lot of us would have been banished or maybe going back to AAA baseball. So we were given a new, I mean, you can pick, except for the Minchners and the Rollins, the Tommy Harpers, but the fill-ins that you look at, Mike Hegan, Comer, Tommy Davis still would have been, he would have been one of the guys that would have stayed with the big club. But if you really look at the Menurkneys and all the rest of us, we could have easily been sent back. Never be heard from again, AAA baseball. So I think it was a great opportunity. Yeah. We had nothing to lose. Everybody there was given a free pass or a pass to play one more year, possibly maybe more if their career was revitalized.
See, these guys knew that this was their last chance. They were, for the most part, the older people. And they had a chance to get at least one more year in the major leagues. And they were happy to be there. They did so much work in the community in Seattle. Had no problems. They loved Joe Schultz. They loved the coaching staff. Sure, they wanted to win more than they did. But they knew what the situation was.
They were a colorful bunch. Good guys, most all of them, and they played hard. I mean, it wasn't. They didn't decide, well, let's just wait out the season or something. And they played hard, and they had a lot of pride. And they knew they were tail-end Charlies, but they were going to give it the best shot they could.
We call ourselves a bunch of mutants, man. We're all cast-offs and just hoping to revitalize our careers. And we didn't really realize how much of a cast-off we were until we got into seeing Sick Stadium and all that stuff once we went up north. But I knew about Sick Stadium because I grew up here.
Well, this was the whole issue in getting a franchise for the previous 7 or 8 years, and the reason that it was never taken completely seriously is anybody that came here, whether it was Joe Cronin or his representatives from the American League, just about anybody with any degree of authority that looked at Sick's Stadium from the early to mid-60s forward, the first thing they said is, well, this is not a home for Major League Baseball. Possibly an interim home with substantial upgrades, but as it stands now, there's absolutely no possible way.
I grew up in Tacoma, where Cheney Stadium, the AAA stadium, was my notion of professional baseball. And that was a very delightful 8,000-seat stadium. So Sick's Stadium seemed to be this magnificent edifice. I had no other perspective upon which to judge Major League Stadium. So this thing seemed to be huge and soaring and epic and just wonderful. I was wrong.
Well, Sick's Stadium was clearly, an upgraded minor league ballpark. Probably wasn't even the best of the minor league ballparks, the AAA teams. But it was decent enough. We remember, of course, they were still building the damn thing even on opening day. People were lined up outside, and when they would nail down a section of wood in the bleachers, they'd let in another 20 people.
I remember coming into the stadium and seeing trucks and construction things going on, because as I learned later, they were basically painting the stadium and getting the last touches on it just as the opening day arrived.
He was really upset at that the city had agreed to, I can't remember now, do some remodeling on the ballpark and add seats and all these things that were not done in time, and the bathrooms weren't working well, and a lot of that really got to him. Now, I'm surely was not the whole problem at all, but those were problems I was aware of because I do the little inspections with him. We'd walk around the park and he'd check on all these things.
But it was a thrown together facility, and we had a lot of problems. We couldn't flush the toilets in the press box until the 7th inning because the water pressure was down. And we had one instance where a fan sitting out in the portable bleachers out in right field got locked in a Santa can, and he didn't get out of there until the morning when they came to clean the places. He was pounding on it, but there was nobody there to hear him.
I think, as far as I can recall, the field was okay. It was just a small ballpark. It wasn't the standards that we were used to, like the Yankee stadiums and other big ballparks. Baltimore was a big ballpark that I came out of. I don't think there was a park that small in the big leagues at that time. Sick's Stadium was not too welcoming in the clubhouse. I mean, I just was in the clubhouse yesterday at Safeco. I mean, come on, 5-star hotel. We were in a seedy hotel. That was our. Our clubhouse was, it's hard to describe. It was small, it was old wood. It was like being in, you ever see Bull Durham? The movie Bull Durham, that was it. That was our clubhouse.
But the clubhouses were old, and the whole stadium was old. If they'd have had a new stadium here to start with, I don't think the Pilots would have ever left. But I don't think they had a whole lot of time to put this team together and the organization together. It was boom, 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 and you can't build a stadium overnight.
They could seat maybe, for AAA ball, around 10,000, but that wasn't enough for the major leagues. They got it up close to 25,000, but they weren't the greatest seats in the world.
So I thought it was almost because it was a minor league ballpark, almost felt like the fans were closer to you, and more so than some of the big ballparks that you're in today.
When I was a kid and you watch old Hollywood movies and baseball, there weren't these luxurious ball yards. There were ball yards like 6 with nothing better than the advertisement on the walls, and they're all different. There isn't a ballpark like Sick's Stadium. There's not a ballpark like Wrigley Field. Not a ballpark like Boston. And I loved it. So lighting could have been better, but I loved it. Of course, I did very well there. So
I can remember standing, I think, somewhere in the stadium and looking out and seeing Mount Rainier, which was pretty awesome for a Flatlander, Iowa kid, saying, wow, this is some place to live. Snow-capped peaks within sight of a downtown Major League stadium.
On the road trip that I got to go on to Anaheim, Oakland, and Kansas City, their stadiums at that time really weren't much better, if any. In fact, Kansas City's was probably worse. So to me, this, even though people complained about the stadium, I thought it was great. It was a great venue.